On today's episode of Her Wild Outdoors, I'm lucky enough to have Jonathan Hayes with me. We are actually going to answer the question that I get asked a lot, and it is, how do you get kids involved in hunting? We're going to give you some of the do's and don'ts. We're going to give you the most important things that you need to hold tight to when you are mentoring a kid, whether they are young or a teenager. But we're just going to really talk about the foundational things you need to take with you when you are teaching a kid how to hunt or fish or do anything in the outdoors. So enjoy this. Let us know what you think. And thank you for listening. Okay, everybody, thanks for joining us for another Her Wild Outdoors episode on the podcast. Today, I have a neighbor. I've got a neighbor joining me from, right here in my area. Jonathan, thank you for joining me today.
You're very welcome. Glad to be here.
Yeah. We met through a podcast, Talking Lead, where Lefty introduced us, and we were talking about wild game dinners right before New Year's. And we got to talk just a little bit about who you are and your commitment to the outdoors. And I think we had been talking ever since about getting you on the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. And I'd love for you to kind of introduce people to who you are and just kind of your background on just how the outdoors has been a part of your life.
So, Jonathan Hayes, Nashville native. I've been hunting all my life, as far as back as I can remember. And kind of the segue to this is, I had, and you and I talked about this briefly. I had four big brothers who were wild, they were crazy. It was a different time, different place, and I came from a divorced home, and I was looked up to my brothers. I idolized, and they were just everything, and I wanted to be just like them. And 13 years old, found myself kind of heading down a very bad path, and sometimes which lead to no return. And I was on a field trip one day with my science teacher, and she owns a farm out in Cheatham County, and we jumped in her wagon, was hooked up to the John Deere. She drove us around her farm, and I remember to this day I had on a pair of parachute pants and an AC/DC shirt.
Yes.
With the sleeves cut off, and I was like, there's just, I don't want to be here. We're in this wagon country. It's November. It's cold. I'm like, I don't want to be here. I was probably 14, 15 then. And it was a weird thing. And, we got out, we started walking around on top of this ridge on this logging road, and her name was Mrs. Estes, and she said, I don't know, it's like she singled me out. She pulled me to the side, and she pointed to this little cedar tree, and she says, do you know what that is? And I go, well, wait, give me a minute. And I looked at this tree, and it was just all torn up to pieces. And I said, a bobcat. I know what that is. A bobcat has scratched that tree, right? And she said, no, honey, that's a buck rub. And I said, okay, I don't understand what you're talking about. She said, well, it's a way for, bucks to, communicate and establish their dominance. And then she continued to show me a scrape line along this logging road, and how the deer communicate. And I was like, wow, these deer are like talking to each other. This is cool. And something clicked within me. I just became obsessed with it, and I wanted to learn more about how these deer communicate. And one thing led to another. And the next year I was like, hey, Mom, you gotta buy me a rifle. You gotta buy me a deer. And my grandfather owned some land, and, shot my first deer shortly thereafter. And, the rest is history. But what I'd found is that I immersed myself into this life, into this lifestyle. And it was almost immediate that the lifestyle changed. The people that I hung out with changed immediately. My hours changed. I couldn't stay up late doing things I shouldn't be doing if I had to get up at 4 a.m. and drive an hour. And
Yeah.
With my buddies or whatever, have my uncle pick me up. And it just changed everything. And then, hunting led to fishing led to other things and different group of people. And really, end of story, turned me into, the guy that I am today, the father that I am today. So just to stress that importance of, getting kids involved early on in their lives.
I've said it a couple of different times in conversations that hunting isn't a season. They talk about hunting seasons, and hunting isn't just a season, it's a lifestyle. And you just blew it out of the park on what that lifestyle can do. And it changes not just your mindset, but it changes you physically on how you manage your time, on what you eat, on how you need to build your body in order to handle some of the things that you set ahead of you as goals. And I think that's just the biggest part of it. If you're talking to kids, if you're talking to youth, teens, whoever you're talking to, it isn't just this one season, because you're always prepping for something. There's always something coming up, whether it's fishing season or turkey or deer or whatever it is, there's always something. So I hate saying it's a season, it's a lifestyle. It's just something that we do all year long, every year.
No, absolutely. And, each season segues into another. And, it's always deer, turkey, and then we fish, and then we try to golf in between, and a funny story. I was hunting one time. I was 18 years old and I was hunting. I was walking down an old logging road, and then I'm left-handed, and none of my friends really golfed or had any. If they did, they didn't have any left-handed golf clubs. But I found an old rusty Wilson left-handed 7-iron while hunting. I was like, this is the oddest thing to find in the middle of the woods, but whatever. Took it home, cleaned it up, had it regripped, and actually fell in love with the game of golf. Mm-hmm. So again, hunting was responsible for that, albeit, happenstance. What a freak coincidence.
Right.
And my kids now golf. They're 12, 10, and 5, and they golf. And without that weird happening just in the woods, that we may not be a golfing family.
Mm-hmm. Well, and both of those things teach patience, right? A whole lot of patience.
Yeah. And sometimes hunting can be, a little bit misleading to kids if you're hunting a really good spot and they're seeing deer, they're shooting deer, and there's instant gratification, there's instant reward sometimes. But like golf, it requires a lot of patience and a lot of practice. Mm-hmm. I do everything I can now to make sure my kids are on deer, and good deer. But the reality is, and I tell them all the time, hey, one of these days you're going to be on your own, mm-hmm. and you're going to hunt for people. Yeah. You're not going to see anything.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's a good, prepping a kid. And I've actually, somebody asked me the other day on a podcast, what is the most asked question that you get? And the most asked question that I get is, how do you get a kid involved in hunting? The next one is, how do you get women involved in hunting? Which is very strange with it being Women in the Outdoors podcast. But the biggest thing is you do want them to see something. It is hard, especially if you're hunting public land, which we've done a little bit of both, but it's hard when you take a kid out and they don't see something. But that is a lesson in itself.
It is. Yeah. It is. And the same goes with fishing. If for all of you who've taken your kids fishing, if you're not catching fish, they're throwing rocks. And they're throwing rocks. They're jumping in the creek. Mm-hmm. And so you have to take those steps where if you're going to take them fishing and you have the resources and the knowledge, you start small. You buy the ultralights, you go buy a couple tubs of night crawlers and some bobbers and some split shots, and you find that brim hole and you yank brim until they're tired, and they're going to dream about it that night, and they can't wait to go back.
Yeah.
fill them with that as much as you possibly can, because those days when you start chasing bass, like we floated yesterday, we floated the river, and I caught some fish, and my 12-year-old didn't catch any.
Yeah.
But he's had enough good days to know that, hey, the bad days are just, part of it. But the good days are what get them hooked. Now, the problem is, what's a good day hunting? I mean, it's hard. Just, it's one thing to go find a brim hole or a crappie bed. It's real hard to find a hunting spot, especially, in today's world, especially down here, and Nashville and surrounding counties, we weren't on the map as far as big deer country, but, we had the world record, the Tucker buck a couple of years ago, and now you can't find a hunting spot. It's just, it's impossible. So how do you get your kids to that hunting spot, especially deer? Turkey's a little different. And where they're seeing deer, they're seeing does, not necessarily bucks or shooting deer, but they're just seeing deer on a, consistent level. And that's the hard part.
Right.
That's the biggest challenge, because if it's cold and there's no deer, that's very, very, very hard for a young man or a young lady to sit in a tree stand for, 3 or 4 hours.
No, it's true. And I think that that's where, you and I have talked about that a lot. We've talked about how you have to set up, especially in the beginning, especially when you are just introducing, you have to be able to plan a short amount of time, especially if it's cold. You can't be out there for 6 hours. There's just no way a kid introducing somebody to it, even adults, if you're not seeing deer, you have to be able to jump out. You have to be able to shorten your trip. You have to be flexible. But you also, if you aren't finding deer, well, what else are you finding? How can you make it more interesting? How can you bring them into it? What are the questions that you can ask? How can you make them a part of the solution of making it better? Like, these are all things that you have to plan out ahead of time and be prepared for.
You do. And you have to, stop and smell the roses along the way. You have to, look at all the deer tracks. Hey, is that a buck track? Is that a doe track? See if you can find a rub or tell me what you know about scrapes. And one thing that I do is I'll take a shed antler that I've found previously, and I'll just, if I'm scouting the hunting spot, a week or two before, I'll just drop it and let them find it.
That's good.
And the older kids get wily to that eventually,
but the younger ones think that it's amazing. It's a treasure that they found. Yeah.
It's such a big deal, and then you try to connect that relationship, and you're like, hey, maybe we'll see that deer that lost that horn,
Yeah.
Maybe, it's a little 6-pointer now, but maybe he's a big 8-pointer, who knows how big he is. And kind of, you have to create those stories and those memories, and you're educating them along the way, because like we said, it can get real boring, and unfortunately, you got to bring the iPad or the phone and make sure it's charged, and you got to bring the snacks.
Yes.
Hopefully, one too much noise. You got to put them in a Ziploc bag.
Yeah. Yeah, we do that. The binoculars are probably the number one best trick I keep in my bag. If anybody, you don't even need the expensive kind, right? Just have a set of binoculars in your bag.
Nope, you're 100% correct. That's all they want to do sometimes is just look through, they'll find a squirrel or, a groundhog or, who knows what. But yes, binoculars are very important.
Yeah.
And not a good pair, just so cheap pair.
Yeah. It's, I think that the best thing that we ever did with our kids was even before taking them on hunts, it was getting them used to hiking, getting them used to walking, even just going on a trail walk. How are you walking? How are you putting your feet? What are you looking for? What are you listening for? Can we go 5 minutes without talking? Can you listen for clues? Do you make up a scavenger hunt? So you're getting them used to being out there, used to paying attention, and making it fun, whether it's with a game or giving them something to, like, a goal to have along the way, but just getting them used to being out there. And so you're not on the day of going, okay, you're not walking right, or it's not negative. It's positive. Hey, you're using your feet correctly. Hey, you're listening. Way to go. And so if you have that opportunity in the off season to go on those walks, to go take them scouting with you, taking the time ahead of time to prep them for that day, then you're not getting as frustrated.
Yes,
because you've put in the time with them that they have needed ahead of time.
Yep. Yeah. And you make it good getting frustrated, as I have done numerous, especially when it comes to walking in the woods. They just don't get it. Yeah. They can't. And, and I would get frustrated, especially if I knew, if we were still hunting and, we're just trying to be quiet and, work our way through during the rut. And it dawned on me. One thing that I just didn't pick up on until maybe my third year hunting with my first son is that we're responsible for all their mistakes. Mm-hmm. They know absolutely nothing about hunting. They know absolutely nothing about walking through the woods or any of that stuff. We're their teachers.
Right.
If they're walking too loud, guess what? That's on you, Dad. That's on you, Mom. Yeah. If they're talking too loud, that's on us, because we didn't prep them. And you got to look at every single aspect of a kid hunting, just like you do, just how you handle yourself with them around a rifle. Before my kids could even hunt with me with a gun, they had to prove themselves with a pellet gun. Mm-hmm. That was, we'd get on the picnic table, we'd get the target set up, and they had to squeeze the trigger, not pull it. Right. And when, the gun went off, they had to still be looking through the scope. Mm-hmm. All these measures about the safety and pointing the barrel in the safe right direction and what lies beyond your target, the 10 commandments of safe gun handling. Yeah. All of that. And then when they were throwing, when they were putting good groups with a pellet gun, I was like, squeezing the trigger softly, and it's like, okay, you're ready. Mm-hmm. And it proved to be invaluable. But I got to thinking that should hold true for everything. Mm-hmm. Let's practice our walking. Let's practice our talking. Let's and it's something else that's important that sometimes you learn too late is if you're in a blind, a ground blind or a 2-man ladder stand, whatever, switching sides. Like, oh, we anticipated the deer is going to come from the right. Oh crap! So now they come over here to the left. How do you get across your lap quietly? Yeah. And we've made those mistakes, and so what we do now is we hunt a lot out of box blinds, and we'll practice. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to sit here. You're going to sit here. But if the deer comes over here, what do? I'll take the gun. I'll put it out in the window. Whatever the situation is, you'll quietly sit in my lap. We'll get situated. We'll take a deep breath, and then we'll start all over again. Right. And we practice that every time we go hunting. It's a must. It's mandatory.
And those are the things, if you aren't seeing deer, those are the things that you can work on. There's always filler. There's always filler stuff that you can do if you plan ahead, if you think ahead to these scenarios, to the things that you need to prep them for. One thing that I didn't even think about until my kids were hunting with me was, their legs are so much shorter that the things that I can step over, they're stepping through. So my path that I need to take needs to be according to their height, not mine. And I'm not tall by any means. I'm 5'2". My kids are now almost my height. But when we started, their ability to step over
Yep.
things was different.
Yep.
So I need to take the steps because they're walking
Yep.
right behind me, following my footsteps. I need to take them in a way where they can be quiet, where they can be allowed to not fail but succeed in that hike in.
Yeah, take them through the dirt, not through the
Right.
And that kind of leads into another thing that people forget when you're hunting in a blind or in a ladder stand that's got a gun support, is that your kids are a lot shorter than you are.
Yes.
And what might be perfect for you as far as height, like whatever chair you hunt out of when you're hunting out of a box blind or a ground blind, and you've got perfect access, perfect height to that window, that's not going to be the case. So
correct.
So when we practice that, going from switching sides, they'll sit in my lap and I'll be, okay, and I always bring a shooting bag with me. Well, maybe that shooting bag works for my son, Sam, but it definitely doesn't work for James.
Mm-hmm. So
now what do we do? Well, we now have to take a shirt and wad it up, or a hat or a backpack and put it on the windowsill. Was that going to make too much noise? But as you know, you can go from no deer to a deer being 5 yards away from you in a matter of seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So you able to make those decisions on the fly. And what I'm getting at is they have to be extremely comfortable
mm-hmm.
to pull that trigger.
Right.
Have to be in a position to where, okay, I'm set. I'm on his heart. I'm on his shoulder. Because what you don't want to do is have one of your kids miss or wound a deer because you took a quick shot, or we just weren't ready.
Exactly.
We didn't prepare. And they don't pull the trigger until, mm-hmm. They send. And that happened to us last year. There was a doe came out, and James actually had to switch sides. He did it quietly. I took the gun, I put it on, because I had his shooting bag on his side of the house, but it wasn't on mine. So I had to take a shirt that I had on the ground and wad it up.
Right.
Put it on the window, grab the gun, put the gun there. And then James had to quietly get over. Doe came out. She was already there. We had to do that quietly. And he put the crosshairs right on her shoulder, and he was about to pull the trigger, but he didn't, because I didn't tell him to. And he was just waiting. And it's hard for a kid. It's so hard for a kid to do that, but he did wait. And while he was waiting, a buck came out, the little forkhorn,
mm-hmm.
and didn't freak out. I just said, James, we're going to switch gears. About 20 yards to your right, a buck just walked out, and he stopped and he regrouped, and he just shifted the gun to where it needed to be, got comfortable. And he could do all of that because he was sitting in my lap. The gun was at a perfect height. He was totally comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And he got on that deer. He had a good range of movement. And I was like, okay, if you're ready, send it. And he did. And it was a great, safe, humane shot. And
mm-hmm.
and it only happened because we had practiced it.
Right. Kids don't handle things that they aren't prepared for easily. They just don't. And it's not of their fault. It's that at least my kids, they like to, it's not that they can't be surprised or they can't change gears real quick like you were talking about, but they like to have a plan for if that happens. My kids love a schedule. They love to know what's coming next. But when things do surprise them, being prepared for that makes anybody react better. And so being able to be calm, being able to move and shift gears as seamless as he did is because of the preparation that has gone in all of those other times before. I think that the one thing that if you do it well, you can see it in your kids' reaction, is the ability to allow them to say, no, I'm not ready to take that shot, or no, I'm not ready to kill when the time comes, but to not push it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, you have to have that conversation, especially if you're a big hunter and Big Brother's a big hunter,
Mm-hmm.
You automatically think, well, he wants to be, or she wants to be just like us. Not necessarily true.
Right.
Because they will still take every opportunity they have just to spend time with you.
Right.
And if that means hunting, that's fine. But you have to make sure, you have to be 100% crystal clear that when that deer walks out, are you ready to pull the trigger? And hey, guess what? If you're not, we're still going to go hunting.
Right.
You can come with me. We're going to spend time together, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. But because it would be you'd be doing a lot of damage if you didn't ask that question. They took the shot and they didn't feel good about it.
Exactly. Exactly. I think that you can ruin hunting for somebody, whether they're a kid or an adult, by pushing them too fast. And I think that would be, that would break my heart if that were to ever happen. Yeah.
It would. And there's so many people who just want to get their kids into hunting and hey, if we could just shoot a deer, they'd be hooked. No, that's not, because guess what happens if you shoot a deer? It dies. Yeah. And then you gut it. Yeah. And there's a lot of blood, and no way to slice that any differently. It is. And some kids will even tell you that they're ready, or yes, they want to do it. And I know it's hard to get it out of them sometimes, but you have to ask that question months and months and months in advance, and just say, hey, but the ultimate message is, if you don't want to do this, it's fine. Because guess what? We got fishing, we got other stuff, we have a perfectly normal life. Without, you don't have to kill an animal to have me love you, because let's not worry about social media or posting pictures of our kids, which is great, but it's not why we do it.
It's not about us. And I think I wrote that down because I wanted to make sure that I said it. When you are teaching a kid, whether it's your kid or somebody else's kid, it is not about you. It is not the time to be selfish. This is not about you. This is about them. This is about taking yourself out of the equation and creating a situation for them that they're being able to do what they want to do, whether it's to take the shot or not, or to just be out in nature or to just support you. I think that there are lots of kids who would love to go with you, who are fine with you hunting. They want to support you in it, but they don't actually want to pull the trigger. And that's perfectly fine as well. My son went with me once, and we have a rule in our house, and they have passed this already, but you have to sit through a hunt from beginning to end and witness it before you can actually take a shot yourself, because I wanted them to be able to see the shot taken, the death, which you've got to process the grief of that, and then the field dressing and the butchering and the processing. Like, it goes from beginning to end. You have to be a part of that process before you actually get to take a shot. And it's because I don't want them to get out there and take a shot and have to see all of that for the first time right after for being responsible for killing something.
Yeah, that's a lot of emotions.
It's so many emotions. And I think we do rush when it does happen. Yay, look what you did. And we don't allow that time to process.
You're correct. I'm glad you brought that up. There's a lot of hugging. There's a lot of high-fiving and all that. But something just dawned on me one day, and I don't know what made me do this, but after my first kid shot their first deer, we hugged, we high-fived. I said, great shot. And I just stopped. And I don't feel to this day, I don't know why, but I just asked him, how do you feel right now? And he was like, I don't know. And I was like,
that's okay.
I was like, I want you to remember how you feel right. I want you to always remember this moment. And we still do that. Yeah. And my youngest one shot his first deer last year, and he cried. Yeah. And I said, hey, buddy. And of course, I worried a little bit. And I was like, hey, why are you crying? you feeling good? You feeling bad? You feeling sad? What's going on? He was like, I don't know why I'm crying.
Yeah.
There's a lot of emotions right now, Dad. And I go, well, I mean, you happy? You sad? Are they tears of joy? He was like, yes, they are. And I was like, okay, but don't force that. Don't take a moment that is very deep and try to, trivialize it and make it super happy and super, everything's good. If it's not, you have to let the moment sink in. Like you said, you have to ask those questions because that's going to affect how things go moving forward.
100%. And both of my kids handled it differently. So my daughter was the excited, jumping up and down, couldn't wait to get in there, field dress. Like she was just, it was one step. She's very methodical, very, like she goes through all of the steps in her head before it even happens. My son is the feeler. And so he needed to take a moment. He needed to be still. He needed to take it in and process through, okay, am I okay with this? What is this feeling that I'm feeling? Because he needed to put a label to it. He needed to determine what that feeling was before moving on to the next step. So rushing through it, you can actually miss some major teaching points, some major learning points that they, like you said, can apply to later hunts, whether they're hunting with you again or somebody else or solo. And if you skip through those parts, then you might actually start teaching bad habits to where they lose the magic of it, or they lose each step of it, or they get to a point where they do take a bad shot, because that's going to happen. And then they've got to figure out, okay, now what? And I think that the emotional side and the feeling side of hunting, you have to teach a kid. They don't know sometimes, depending on their age, how to process a feeling at all. And all of a sudden you have just introduced killing something that they never thought, like they don't know how to process that. Adults don't know how to as well. So you can't skip the steps. You really can't.
You can't. And hey, message to all the dads, you want your kids to be tough and all they're not. They're just not. I mean, my boy missed a deer one time and he cried because he thought, and he didn't. And a lesson learned there, we got down and we looked around for blood and he was just so upset. And I never once thought, hey, man, he shouldn't be crying. I was happy he was upset because that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
And Adam, I said, man, we've got 30 minutes of daylight left. Let's get back in the stand. And we did. And he ended up shooting a deer. And talk about things, taking a 180, going from super, super sad to super, super joyous.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that right there is what hunting is all about, son. That right. And along the way, part of it also is, I think we need to talk about this, is the fun really starts when the deer's on the ground, because we get to take that walk, and that's a very important thing. If the deer drops like right there, then it's a dead deer.
Right.
But if it goes into the woods, if it's a double long, he runs 100 yards or whatever, that's an opportunity. Because if you don't see or hear that deer crash, trust me, your kid doesn't think he killed it.
Right.
There's that doubt. And I've been through that. So maybe you saw him through the binoculars. Maybe you saw him crash. Maybe keep that to yourself.
Yeah.
Track that deer, find the blood, find the hair, find the overturned leaves. Let your kids find it. Let them be a little bit ahead of you. Teach them a little bit about tracking. Of course, tracking is a lifelong learning process.
Yes.
But if you know the deer's dead, then you can obviously, take some liberties, with your kid, and then let them spot that deer. There's nothing like seeing that white belly hanging. And really, that's when the fun begins. That's when the hunt stops and the fun begins. And that goes from the minute you get out of your tree stand up until you leave the processor, assuming you go to the processor.
Mm-hmm.
And to watch your kids jump out of the truck when they've shot a basket 6 and walk out of that truck like they've just shot a giant booner is amazing. Mm-hmm. And hopefully the guys at the processors are good about that, because Sam will get out and he'll be like, well, I got a big old 6-pointer for you here. I want 2 shoulders and burger. I want the back strap cut up separately, tenderloin. We might get some summer sausage out of this one. And he just comes out and his chest is just pumped out. And he's just so proud. The guys play. Man, it's a really big 6-pointer. I got to hand it to you. And it's a huge deer.
Yeah.
And really, so there's an extra, 2 hours or more mm-hmm. from where that deer's on the ground, and you track it, you gut it, you get it in the Polaris or your truck or whatever, and you drive to the processor, or you take it home and you skin it, you butcher it. That's an extra 2 or more, 3 hours of learning and bonding that I think a lot of people miss out on. It's not about the killing.
No.
Fun stops when the deer hits the ground, but the fun starts. Yeah. And that one message, I think, that can be overlooked if you're not paying attention, because it's just as important. Yeah.
That was one of the questions that I've gotten as well. How do you teach a kid how to field dress without grossing them out? And of course, we taught them way before they even took a shot. But we just kept it very scientific, very much so almost a science experiment, watching a biology, like how is it all put together? And of course, I come from a surgical background, so all of the details of how everything is organized and how it works inside of the deer, where it's not just a muddled mess in there. And hopefully you've got a shot where you can still see the order of things when they're learning, and they get to see, this is how they breathe and where the food goes, and this is their heart and their lungs. And then you come down and here's the stomach, and look how cool, this stomach isn't like our stomach, and this is how it works. And intestines and liver and kidneys, like these are all valuable lessons that they're going to get. If you've got a young kid, they're going to not even get until middle school or high school with anatomy and physiology and things like that, but they're able to see it now. And so it can actually be so much fun to see how everything is ordered, and how it's a great, that's my favorite part.
You hit the nail on the head. That's something I haven't done a great job with, but I have a friend whose dad is a physician, and the way he field dresses a deer and teaches kids is a lot different than the way I do it.
Yeah. I think that as adults, it's for me, it's how fast can I do it if I'm by myself, because I want to get that done. I want to preserve the meat. I want to get out of there. I want to start butchering. Like all of this is in my head, but with a kid, it's that slower process.
Yeah. And for some reason, and we do a lot of evening hunts. Mm-hmm. It's always seems like it's a Sunday. We got to get home and go to school or whatever. So I'm rushing through it, So, and I'm just like, okay, here we go. Make sure you don't cut your hand.
Yeah. Don't hit the gut and don't cut your hand.
Yeah. Don't hit this right here, which I've done. And it got all, it's just got to laugh about it. But it's, the way that you described it, slow, methodical. Mm-hmm. Here's the lungs, here's the heart, here's the liver, here's the paunch, and hey, oh, look, there's a tenderloin way back there. And then here's the stuff. You got to stick your arm way in there. We got to cut the brisket, and it's, and you want to watch a kid just be totally into something that it's really more attention and excitement will be paid to that than the shooting and the killing and the dragging and the processing and the taxidermy. Is when you let that deer open, those kids are like, oh my gosh, what is that?
And it's the value of respecting the deer as you're doing it. It's the precision that you put into it isn't just, let's be careful because of the meat. It's, this is a life that we just took. Let's take the time to
do it right.
Right. Yeah. And that's a valuable lesson that they will take with them wherever, because if you're going to respect something that you shoot, unlike video games these days where it's shoot and kill and move on, like it's nothing. The time that you take after you shoot a deer or a bear or whatever you're hunting, that in turn respects the fact that you just took a life, and there's value in that. We're seen as hunters as this cold-blooded, hard, evil people. But if you're teaching your kids that sense of respect, if you're taking the time in the aftermath of it, if you've got the time, it teaches more than just the process of it. It's teaching the respect of it.
You're right. And I think I want to mention something before I forget. Traditions are important with hunting, whether it be if you're lucky enough to hunt on family land and, get the grandparents involved or whatever. We don't have that opportunity, but, we have traditions where, there's always a country store when when you're going hunting. Yeah. And whatever your deal is, sausage and biscuit or, fried bologna sandwich, which is what my kids, there's a little market we stop at. And that's tradition, kill a deer, not kill a deer. It's, we always stop off and they, you have to think about when you were little, all your childhood memories. And it's always the ones that were repeated, that kind of stand out, the big memories. That's something they're going to, there's something is traditions. And then, and then I think at the end of the day, one thing that we also have to understand is that as they take those traditions with them and they take, those memories and everything, is that they're going to be hunting by themselves someday. And are they ready? Are they ready to go hunting without you? Are they going to, and do they know enough about it to enjoy it without you being there? Yeah. And that's kind of my goal right now. It's part selfish so I can spend more time with my kids. Yes. They're the stewards of the land going forward. So it's just as a whole giving back to the sport that gave me so much. And then the third part of it is I want them to pass this down and I want them to keep doing it because it's going to keep them grounded. Now, is it going to completely keep them on track and away from drugs and alcohol? I don't know. I hope but it's not a guarantee, but it's certainly, I will say that, and I'm speaking from experience, but you want to make sure that when he's, he or she is in college or after college or whatever the case may be, and they choose to use a climbing stand, they know how to use it. Do they know they all have to wear their safety belt no matter what? Yes. That they don't, do they like to get high, 30 feet, 40 feet, I certainly don't.
No, but some people do. And so are you preparing them for that? So my daughter has been hunting with me for 2 years now, and she hunted with me all the year before without even the desire to take a shot, but she still came with me and she still wanted to be there. And she is the observer. She's the one who wants to know every single thing before she does it. And so this year she had the opportunity. We had not been able to get her on a deer. We worked all year. This was her year. She had decided that was what she wanted to do. And in January, well, it was right after Christmas. She went, it was the coldest day. I don't know if you remember that, but it was right after Christmas. I think the wind chill was like 14 degrees that morning. It was really, really chilly here. And she had the opportunity to go with a friend of ours. And it kind of crushed me a little bit because like she hasn't had the ability to take a deer without me or my husband. And it was like, okay, we're going to let you go. It took a little bit for me to let go, but I started looking back, and she had been with us so often, and she had learned all these lessons, and she knew she was prepared, and she was like, Mom, I can do this. And I got a text that morning, I think it was 5:45. Hey, I'm in my spot. I'm safe. And at that point in time, I teared up. I'm tearing up right now thinking about it. At that point in time, I knew that she had absorbed all of that information, and she saw what I had done getting out there. She knew that that was what we always did. And she was carrying on that. Hey, I'm in my spot. I'm safe. And she got a deer that day, and it was on her own with somebody else. And the person didn't have a whole lot of experience either. So she had never taught somebody to hunt. So this was her first time doing that. She had not really field dressed before on her own. So my daughter did a lot of it. And there was a sense of pride in that. My 12-year-old is out there not just hunting alone. She's hunting with somebody, but she's not just hunting. She is actually teaching a little bit, and she is showing me that she can do this on her own. And it was because of all of the time that we had put in ahead of time. And it just, there was so much pride as a parent. There was a little bit of grief that I wasn't there, but there was so much pride in the fact that she did it, and she did it well.
That's something to be proud of. And I know how you feel when it comes to that. It's that lets you know that you've done your job correctly, that they're on the right path. And it's turning them, letting them go with someone else. Oh my gosh, how difficult.
Yes. Yeah. But she did it, and she did it in a way that I did not remind her, hey, text me when you get there. She did it on her own.
She was thinking, for sure,
that she was safe, and she was even on the ground, but she wanted. It was just tradition. It was habit that she had seen it happen, and that was just what she was supposed to do. That's
amazing. And they're still kids, and we shelter them, and we try not to coddle them too much. And they'll send you little messages, but you have to pay attention to when they're ready. Like we were hunting last year, and we were on a doe hunt, and I'm looking way out to my left with my binoculars, and I hear Sam go, hey, there's a deer. Doe just walked out. And I'm thinking he's looking my direction. I go, okay, I don't see her. And all of a sudden I heard click, safety comes. And I looked over and I was like, okay, are we doing this? And I said, hang on, let me look at her. And I was like, yeah, that's a doe we want to take. And, just like clockwork, boom, dropped her. Right. And, we were there because someone had requested us to come and shoot a bunch of does. We're like, absolutely, we'll come shoot does. Shoot as many does as you want. Because hey, in Tennessee, you can shoot 3 a day.
Yeah, you can.
And hey, that's something else we should talk about. So if we are in a situation where we can do that, and yes, we do have a deep freeze, but it's very important, I think, that if you're in a situation to where you can give to Hunters for the Hungry, or to the needy, you need to do that. And I'll tell you why, because you can do the research on how many people that we feed every year. But the first year, a 9-year-old shot last year, he immediately said, because Sam had just shot a doe the day before, he immediately said, I want to give this deer to Hunters for the Hungry. And I wanted to keep it. I was like, well, let's wait till you shoot your second deer, or third or whatever. And he was like, nope. And I was like, oh, wow. I was like, okay, done.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah. I think we did. We got 8 this year, and we donated 2, and the kids were so proud to be able to do that. But yeah, I think I posted a couple weeks ago. The numbers were out, and Tennessee alone donated 143,000 pounds of venison.
Yeah.
To Hunters for the Hungry. And that's not even including donating to, your neighbor or a person that is needy without going through that program. And
right.
The ability not only to feed your family, but to provide it for another family is something that every kid should know about.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Goodness gracious. I think so. If we had 3, I'm going to choose 3 things, and then you can choose 3 things as we're kind of closing down. The 3 things that I would say are the top 3 things that you need to keep in mind when taking a kid hunting, no matter what age. Number 1 is preparation. And that's prep for you, because that comes first, and having a plan, but also prep for them. I think the second thing is patience. I have been in plenty of situations where I had both kids with me on public land in a ground blind, and they were both arguing, and they heard a doe blow at them and run off. In that moment, I was so frustrated, but then I had to take a second and be, okay, this is a lesson. This is a teaching moment. This is all about it. This is all a part of it. This was supposed to happen. So having patience. And I think the third one for me is like we talked about, is giving the space during each moment of a hunt for them to process through emotion. I think those are my top 3.
Yes, those are good ones. Absolutely. I agree. Mine would be, as I said before, especially to the dads, not necessarily the moms. They do a lot better than we do. But remember, their mistakes are your mistakes.
Yes.
If they miss a deer, it happens. That's on you. Mm-hmm. Don't be mad.
Right.
They weren't prepared. They didn't go through the motions. So number 1, remember those. It's all about how you prepare them. Mm-hmm. Don't get upset. Don't lose your temper. Mm-hmm. Number 2, the hunt is one thing, but the fun starts when the deer hits the ground.
Yes.
That's when the fun starts. That's how you can get your kids hooked. That's how you get them to come back. Mm-hmm. Is the blood trail and the processors and the traditions, the country store, the keeping the shell casing, taking a permanent marker, writing on that shell casing, the date that deer was shot, how big it was, how much it weighed, weigh the deer, encourage you to weigh the deer. Mm-hmm. The big thing. So the fun starts after the hunt. And then the third, of course, is absolutely, like you said, the preparation. Mm-hmm. Don't put such lofty goals on your kids if you haven't prepared them.
Right.
And I understand it's very hard to know what you're doing when it comes to a kid, because it just seems like I woke up one day and I just started shooting deer, right? Yeah. I don't know if there was prep work involved in what I did. And I made it work somehow. But make sure they know how to handle a firearm, the 10, commandments of gun safety, which are readily available anywhere. They're shooting tight groups. They're knowing how to breathe properly. Mm-hmm. So much happens, when they're holding a firearm.
Yeah.
So, and the preparation, all the other stuff, how to walk and things like that. But for me, the most important thing is you put a gun in a child's hands, you better make sure they know how to use it.
Right. Right. Because you don't want accidents to happen. But B, you don't want a negative ending on a deer to happen. You want everything to be positive. I like all 3 of those. And
you make a good point. If they do miss a deer, Make it positive. Make it funny. Oh man, you missed a mile, man. Were you even aiming at his heart, or were you?
Yeah.
You know, make it lighthearted. Make it fun, because trust me, it hurts them a lot more than it hurts you.
It does, because they're looking to make you proud. So at a certain point in time, it changes into it's their hunt. But for a certain amount of time, it's your hunt together. Like there will be a time where it changes over to I hunt because this is my thing. But before that, it's your thing together. And all our kids want to do is to make us proud.
Yeah.
So
that's probably the important thing that this whole podcast.
Yes. Yeah. Is you can be proud of them in every single step of it. There doesn't have to be a deer on the ground. There doesn't have to be a fish on the line. You can be proud of how they walked in. You can be proud of how they sat still. You can be proud of how they whispered. You can be proud even of the fact that they chose in the moment of the shot that they weren't ready for it, because that shows self-restraint. And that is an attribute that they can apply to anything in their lives. So there is pride in every single minute of a hunt.
And unfortunately, we as parents don't learn that soon enough, but all they want to do is make their parents proud.
Yeah. Yeah.
All they want to do. Forget the hunting, forget the fishing, forget the Xbox, forget all of that.
Yeah.
All they want to do is make you proud. And that will go away. Enjoy it while it lasts. But just know that as you're getting upset with them because they've done something stupid or whatever, you're not only hurting their feelings because, they did something stupid, but they feel like they've let you down.
Yes. Yeah.
And
that's the last thing you want to do. You can ruin their love for hunting by showing disappointment in something they could not control.
It's like sports, it's how many kids have been turned off by sports because we pushed them too hard.
Yes.
And same thing with hunting.
I think that might be the biggest takeaway.
I think you're right.
Because we have control over that. We have the ability as adults to self-monitor, to self-censor how we treat our kids out there and how we view it. They don't have the control yet. They are learning, but we have the control over a situation to say, hey, man, that really stunk that you missed the deer, but dude, or sister, way to treat your gun with respect, way to point out the great things that they did right. We have always made such a big deal about the way they do things right, even if there was, nothing came to fruition. Way to learn this lesson. Way to apply what we talked about in the car on the way there. There are so many things that you can show them that they did right.
Very true. Tell them how proud you are of them every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every day.
All the time.
Every single day. That's all they want to hear.
I think they hear no so often.
Absolutely.
That hearing that you're proud of them, because a lot of lessons along the way are, hey, no, that's a no, or you're teaching that boundary, you're teaching that. And so to throw in the positives, to throw in what you're proud of, what they're doing right, gives them that boost. You're not, when you're doing it that way, you're not spoiling them. You're not, gushing over something that's trivial. Those are lessons that they're pushing forward, that they are applying to their lives, that they're applying to decision making. You're building a foundation of who they are going to be as adults. It's
Yep. They won't grasp the whole "I love you" until they're adults. They do grasp the fact that you're proud of them. Yeah. Very early.
Yep. It's true. And you can then notice it. Like I see how my daughter teaches kids underneath her. And she is applying the way that we have taught her to teaching underneath her. I've seen her explain hunting to younger kids who don't have that in their lives. And I hear the words that she uses are the same words that we have used. And I don't ever want that to be a negative. I don't ever want somebody else to hear from her something that I would go, ooh, did I say that? Where did she learn that from? Where did she, because that's not the message that should be coming out. I've only been able to sit back and take a step back and say, she's got this. She made valid points on that. And I'll say, my daughter and I both learned a valuable lesson this year. And I haven't really talked about it all that much, but her doe that she took at a doe management hunt that she went on in Kansas was pregnant. And I had never experienced that, let alone her. And so we were both learning alongside of each other. You know, this is a part of management. This is a part of the process. This can happen. What do we do? And I, as a hunter, have to be prepared for anything out there. We can't control the situation having our kids out there. You don't know what you're going to come up against, but you can be prepared on how to respond to it. And that's all we can teach them is how do you respond to a situation with the preparation that you have? It's not a negative thing. It happens. But how do you move on from there? How do you react to it? And how do you handle it? And how do you apply it to future hunts? And that's all we can do.
Yeah. A negative will stick with a kid a lot longer than a positive.
Yes. Yep. And that goes just to what we said is probably the most valuable thing is showing them that we're proud of them. They will always remember the disappointment that they see in our faces, always.
Yeah, that's right. And the fact that they let you down or they feel like they let.
Yeah. I think when she found out that the doe was pregnant, she looked straight at me to make sure that I wasn't disappointed in her. And you can show it to them with your eyes. You don't even have to say anything. So it is a constant reminder to me. How are you responding? How are you looking? How is she receiving? How is he receiving? Your body language, your tone, the words that you're using. And they take it all in. They are so observant.
So important. And, I had heard Dabo Sweeney, the coach for the Clemson Tigers. He was being interviewed and he said, the interviewer was like, hey, you've got such a good relationship, a good rapport with your players. How do you do it? And he says, when they do good is when I yell. When they do bad is when I talk in a calm voice. I'm like, oh, shit, I've been doing it wrong.
Yeah. It's a huge reminder. My kids have been asked before, who are you more afraid of, your mom or your dad? Like in a joking manner. And both of my kids said my mom. And I asked my daughter one time, why do you say that? And she goes, whenever we have done something bad, you usually don't yell. You get on my level at my eye level and you talk very low and softly. Yeah. And she said that is more scary than anything. And it's the eye contact. But you can do that. You can do that both ways. It really is. I don't know. We can really hurt our children the way we respond to them. And it's not, I'm going to make mistakes. I'm not perfect. Definitely not a perfect parent. It is a learning process. But I think that the seconds that we take to make a decision on how we're going to respond are vital, whether it's in parenting in regular day life or out in the field hunting and fishing. It's just that moment.
Good stuff.
I truly appreciate this conversation, Jonathan. I've actually had a lot of people ask, hey, how do we do this? How do we have these conversations? We want to hear how we get our kids involved. What year do you let your kid hunt? What year? And I think it's a valuable conversation that people are going to want to listen to. So thank you for being a part of it.
You're very welcome. And there's no formula to it. And,
no.
you know, each kid is different.
Heck
and
yeah.
just don't know until you get there.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But I appreciate you. Tell us a little bit about Deerliverance. We have touched a little bit on why you do this and why it's so dear to your heart. But let's talk about Deerliverance just really quick before we get off.
Sure. So I was in the outdoor industry for about 9 years. And, you know, hunting led to that.
Mm-hmm.
Plain and simple. It all started. I was a pro staffer with Mossy Oak, and, you know, that led to bigger and better things, you know, to, you know, SHOT Shows and going to China a couple times a year and manufacturing hunting products. I mean, what a dream. And without hunting, that dream, you know, doesn't come to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
So I was at a trade show one day. I think it was ATA. And I remember seeing, you know, all these people gathered around a booth, and I was like, what are they over there doing? And it was catching deers, and they were, you know, all these people were wanting to buy t-shirts and hats. And I was like, man, they're, you know, Hoyt's over here, and, you know, Rage is over here, and all these people are lined up to see these catching deer guys. And I was like, oh, what's going on? And well, they were selling a message, you know, it was a funny one. And I thought, wow, I'd really like to do something like that. And I was like, what can I do that would have an impact? You know, I got to thinking years ago, we were talking about, you know, if we had a hunting show, what would it be named? And I was like, well, it'd be Deerliverance. Funny takeoff on the movie, you know?
Yeah.
And then I got to thinking about, you know, a buddy of mine was like, man, I think you're onto something here. Dr. Brooks Tiller, who's in the industry and, you know, an outdoorsman, he was like, you know, that he knows my story. He goes, you were delivered by the outdoors. You were delivered by deer. You were, you know, Deerliverance. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is so true. And, you know, the tagline is kind of saved by the wild.
Yeah.
That was. And I just wanted to, you know, the goal was to let people know that no matter what place you're in, there's always a way out. You know, the place I was in wasn't all that bad, but it could have been a whole lot worse. And you hear it all the time. Hunting saved my life. Well, it did. It did. And it led to so many things. And honestly, it just made me the man I am today. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Yeah. But I was saved by the wild 100%. And I just want to make sure that my kids are. And I am saving them by the wild. I'm trying to get out in front of it. No, there's no guarantees. They're not going to do some bad stuff in their life, but I'm trying to lay the foundation, you know, sturdy foundation, which they can build upon. And not only that, they can pass it down to their kids, and we need future stewards of the land.
Yes.
And that's our kids. There's just no other way to slice that. It's our younger generations. We have to get them back. But at the end of the day, Deerliverance, you know, was just kind of my way to be like, hey, tell me your story. Let me know. Be proud to say, hey, hunting saved my life. Deer saved my life. Whatever the case may be, I was saved by the wild. So, you know, I sell some hats and t-shirts, and, you know, it's just kind of a side gig, but it's just a way to get that message out there. Yeah. And for me, to kind of give back and to pay homage to, you know, a sport that's just given me so much.
Yeah. It's one of those, I don't know. I think Doug Duran puts it, I think I've got his t-shirt that says it's not ours. It's just our turn. And it's a way to remember we are responsible for passing it on, but not just passing it on, but passing it on well. And and there's a difference. So I think what you've got, like your message and the importance of doing it well, I think that it's something that everyone needs to hear if they have
Mhm.
a hand on a kid's life in the outdoors at all.
Yeah, and it's not they have to hunt. That's not it.
No.
There's a lot of conservation who don't hunt. And maybe that's something we do you can do a podcast on later on. There's two monetary buckets in the federal government. One is for hunting and one is for fishing.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody really talks about that. And that funnels down to the paying the game wardens, to creating public hunting lands, to wildlife habitat. And that's something to think about, that for some reason no one talks about, all the excise taxes. People do talk about that. Mm-hmm. But those excise tax, they go into a bucket, and those buckets are called something, and the names elude me right now, but they're funds, and they trickle down into the proper place. And without the hunting dollars, those funds aren't there, and that just doesn't happen. So that's a good slogan your buddy came up with. It's so true. It's just our turn right now. It's mine, and I'm doing with it everything that I know how, but with the tools that I've got. It's not everything, but I'm just trying to do my part.
Yes, we both are, and I'm glad to be on your side. So
Likewise.
I'm glad that we were able to have this conversation. You and I hopefully are going to be seeing each other soon, and I truly appreciate it. People can follow you on Instagram, I know, with Deerliverance, but you've also got a couple other places that they can find you. Tell them how.
So the Deerliverance is just Deerliverance. Mm-hmm. And then I have a personal Instagram page. If anybody's interested, it's Jonathan Hayes 2014.
Yep. But you're on like the web too. You've got a web page for Deerliverance and everything.
Yeah, Deerliverance. It's just deerliverance.com.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds good. Well, if anybody has any questions, shoot it over to him. He's got some great answers and great conversation. So, Jonathan.
Absolutely. Let's do it again. Okay.
That sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.